Welcome to The Hidden Truth. We're still pretty new to YouTube, and we're looking to expand our channel. If you enjoy our videos, please consider sharing them on social media or other UFO communities. Your support means everything to us. Today we'll be looking at a string of UFO events that occurred in Britain in the 1980s. Enjoy the video. The year is 1980. The place? Todmorden, Yorkshire, England. A UFO was witnessed by a police officer. The object was hovering in the middle of the road. A diamond-shaped object with a bank of windows and the bottom half rotating. The officer's radio also failed to work at this time. The officer experienced missing time, and he found himself down the road 100 yards with the object nowhere to be found. On November 29, 1980, at about 05 hours, the witness, Police Constable Alan Godfrey, stated,
I was driving a police car at the time, and in the early hours of the morning, I came across what I thought at that time was a bus that had slid across the road sideways. And when I approached the object, I got within about 20 yards of it and immediately I came across what I now would describe as a UFO. It was about 20 feet wide and 14 feet high and was diamond-shaped. It had a bank of windows in it and the bottom half was rotating. The police blue beacon was bouncing back off it, as were my headlights. It was hovering off the ground about 5 feet. And it was very frightening. Very frightening.
Godfrey's attempts to contact his base by radio, using both VHF and UHF, failed, so he decided to sketch the object on his clipboard. Suddenly, there was a bright flash, and he found himself 100 yards further down the road, and there was no sign of the UFO. He drove back to the scene and discovered the road was dry, despite it having rained. A bus traveling on the road stopped and the driver got out and noticed the same thing. Godfrey returned to the station but couldn't account for 25 minutes of what alien abduction researchers call missing time. He also had a split boot but couldn't account for it. Under hypnosis, arranged by solicitor Harry Harris several months later, he recalled seeing small beings and a tall man with a beard on the craft, who conducted medical tests on him. What are we to make of this very unusual occurrence from 1980? There are only a few possibilities. 1. The officer is lying for some unknown reason. What would the officer have to gain by lying? I think it's unlikely, but it cannot be discounted. 2. The officer is crazy. If the officer is crazy, he would have been let go from the force and not allowed to continue service. 3. An unusual alien craft encountered the officer and abducted him for a short period of time. If true, then this is very significant. We need to know more. 4. A secret military craft encountered the officer and abducted him for a short period of time. If true, then this is very significant. We need to know more. I think this would be even more frightening. Think about it. The year is 1980. The place? Rendlesham Forest, near Ipswich, Suffolk, England. A UFO was witnessed by military personnel in the forest. The object had landed or crashed in the woods. It was described as a strange, glowing object, metallic in appearance and triangular in shape, approximately 2 to 3 meters across and 2 meters tall. As the patrolmen approached the object, it maneuvered through the trees and disappeared. On December 27, 1980, at about 03 hours, the witness, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, U.S. Air Force Deputy Base Commander at Woodbridge at the time, stated,
Early in the morning of the 27th of December 80 approximately 0300 two USAF security police patrolmen saw unusual lights outside the back gate at RAF Woodbridge. Thinking an aircraft might have crashed or been forced down, they called for permission to go outside the gate to investigate. The on-duty flight chief responded and allowed 3 patrolmen to proceed on foot. The individuals reported seeing a strange glowing object in the forest. The object was described as being metallic in appearance and triangular in shape. Approximately 2 to 3 meters across the base and approximately 2 meters high. It illuminated the entire forest with a white light. The object itself had a pulsing red light on top and a bank of blue lights underneath. The object was hovering or on legs. As the patrolmen approached the object, it maneuvered through the trees and disappeared. At this time the animals on a nearby farm went into a frenzy. The object was briefly sighted approximately an hour later near the back gate. The next day, 3 depressions 1.5 inches deep and 7 inches in diameter were found where the object had been sighted on the ground. The following night, the 29th of December 80, the area was checked for radiation. beta, gamma readings of 0.1 mRöntgens were recorded with peak readings in the 3 depressions and near the center of the triangle formed by the depressions. A nearby tree had moderate .05.07 readings on the side of the tree toward the depressions. Later in the night, a red sun-like light was seen through the trees. It moved about and pulsed. At one point it appeared to throw off glowing particles and then broke into 5 separate white objects and then disappeared. Immediately thereafter, 3 star-like objects were noticed in the sky, 2 objects to the north and 1 to the south, all of which were about 10 degrees off the horizon. The objects moved rapidly in sharp angular movements and displayed red, green, and blue lights. The objects to the north appeared to be elliptical through an 812 power lens. They then turned to full circles. The objects to the north remained in the sky for an hour or more. The object to the south was visible for 2 or 3 hours and beamed down a stream of light from time to time. Numerous individuals, including the undersigned, witnessed the activities in paragraphs 2.
News of the Woodbridge incident first leaked out in January 1981, when Brenda Butler was approached by a U.S. Air Force security officer who had proven to be a reliable source of information in the past. Given the pseudonym of Steve Roberts by the authors of Sky Crash, he confided that a UFO had crash-landed in Rendlesham Forest on the night of December 27th, and that he had himself witnessed its 3 small silver-suited occupants carrying out repairs while suspended in the shaft of light. The craft had remained on the ground for several hours, he claimed, during which time General Gordon Williams, overall base commander at the time, had communicated with the aliens. Many military personnel were present, and films and photos were taken which were immediately confiscated by senior officers when the craft had taken off. Another witness going by the name James Archer advised that he was a security officer that night, and advised that at about 2 a.m., guards at the Woodbridge gate had seen lights apparently descending out of sight into Rendlesham Forest. The guards radioed for permission to investigate, but were told to wait until relief guards could be sent to replace them. Thus Archer and another security officer, Airman John Burroughs, real name, were ordered to drive out to the area in a jeep, leaving their guns behind. Since the lane from the gate were full of ruts and potholes, the 2 men were obliged to proceed on foot. After a short while, their radio suddenly went dead. Then they came across the object. Archer described it as triangular in shape, with 3 landing legs. It was about 10 to 12 feet in diameter, and 8 feet high, with a blue light on top, red lights and a white light in the middle, and a brighter white light emanating from the underside. Archer was emphatic that no alien occupants were involved, although he was sure that something was inside the object. I don't know what, but the shapes did not look human. Maybe they were like robots. The 2 men followed the object as it maneuvered silently around the forest, and at one stage got to within a few feet of it. They followed the craft as it moved into a small field, where it caused panic among the cows. Finally, the object emitted an intense burst of white light, rose to about 200 feet, and then shot off at high speed. Yet another witness, Sergeant Larry Warren, who was stationed at Bentwaters at the time, advised that the date of the actual landing was the 30th, not the 27th of December. He says that the jeep in which he and other security officers were riding in en route to the landing site kept failing. On arrival at a clearing in the forest, he encountered other groups of military personnel, including RAF officers. He could hear helicopters overhead. A movie camera was pointing towards something which looked like a transparent aspirin tablet, hovering just above the ground, about 50 feet in diameter, surrounded by security officers. A bright red light approached from behind the trees, descended silently over the aspirin, and then exploded in a multiple-colored burst of light. Both the aspirin and light vanished, leaving in their place a large domed disc with intricate patterns on its surface. Warren and a couple of colleagues approached it, but the next thing he recalls is being back in bed at the Bentwaters base. Together with other witnesses, he was ordered to see the base commander, who told them all that they must not discuss what had happened, as it had a high security level. Warren also claims as clothes would check for radioactivity. He learned from other witnesses that those who had been on the far side of the object, i.e. opposite his position, had seen small alien beings. He was also told that false trails had been laid in the forest and that stories of alien contact were invented in order to discredit the entire story. Warren, 19 years old at the time, later told his family about the incident, as a result of which he claims he was given an honorable discharge from the Air Force. A further witness came forward. Sergeant Adrian Bastinza, the security police acting commander at Woodbridge, advised,
"We were in the alert area, and I was on my way over to RAF Woodbridge base at around midnight. While we were over there, one of my patrols sighted an object of some sort. It was like a fire in the forest area. I notified my acting commander, which was Lieutenant England, and he went ahead and called the commander that night. which was Colonel Halt, and he told Lieutenant England to check out the situation. We proceeded to check out the situation, myself and Lieutenant England and Sergeant Ball. What I remember clearly was that when we got there, Colonel Halt pointed to the individuals he wanted to go with him. So we went back to Bentwater's base, grabbed 2 light alls, and had a patrol refuel them. And once we refueled them, we took them out there to see if we could light up the area to see if there was anything out there. In the process of trying to check the light alls, everything was malfunctioning. When we got to point of the sighting of the object, we had trouble turning the light alls on. Our truck wouldn't run, either. It was kind of like all the energy had been drained out of both light all units. We started to search. One individual had said he had spotted the object, like sitting on the ground. We proceeded to look and in the process found kind of like triangular tripods, burned into the ground at 3 different standpoints. They were like it was a heavy object. They took radiation readings of the holes, and they got a radiation reading as I recall. Then I recall we were walking through the woods and we came upon the lights again. And that's when I first saw the object. I think it was the Flight Chief Sergeant Ball, and I believe another individual officer. We kept searching the area, kind of like trying to follow the object, and it was moving through the trees. And in the process, we came upon a yellow mist, about 2 or 3 feet off the ground. It was like dew, but it was yellow, like nothing I've ever seen before. We kind of, like, ignored it. We were worried about the object, to see if we could locate it again, or catch up to it again. We did see the object again. It was hovering low, like moving up and down anywhere from 10 to 20 feet. Back up, back down, back up. There was a red light on top and there were several blue lights on the bottom. But there was also like a prism, rainbow lights on top, and several other colors of light. It was a tremendous size. It even surprised me that it was able to fit into the clearing. A tremendous size, and I use the word tremendous carefully. It was a round, circular shape. I hate to say like a plate, but it was thicker at the center than it was at the edge.
Bustinza and the other witnesses were ordered to form a perimeter around the object at about 15-foot intervals. After observing the object for about 30 minutes, Bustinza says it took off suddenly.
It was gone in a flash, almost like it just disappeared. When it left, we were hit by a cold blast of wind which blew toward us for 5 or 10 seconds. It was a really scary feeling. I was just frozen in place at first. My life actually passed in front of my eyes.
A tape recording of the incident was eventually released, known as the Halt tape.
148. We're hearing very strange sounds out of the farmer's barnyard animals. They're very, very active, making an awful lot of noise. You just saw a light. Slow down. Where? Right on this position. Here. Straight ahead in between the trees. There it is again. Watch. Straight ahead off my flashlight. Sir, there it is.
I see it too. What is it?
We don't know, sir.
It's a strange, small red light. Looks to be maybe a quarter to a half mile. Maybe further out. I'm gonna switch off. The light is gone now. It was approximately 120 degrees from our site. Is it back again?
Yes, sir. Well, douse flashlights then. Let's go back to the edge of the clearing so we can get a better look at it. See if you can get the starscope on it. The light's still there and all the barnyard animals have gone quiet now. We're heading about 110, 120 degrees from the site out through to the clearing now. Still getting a reading on the meter. We're about 150 or 200 yards from the site. Everywhere else is just deathly calm. There is no doubt about it. There's some type of strange flashing red light ahead. Sir, it's yellow.
I saw a yellow tinge in it too. Weird. It appears to be maybe moving a little bit this way. It's brighter than it has been. It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way. Pieces of it are shooting off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird.
2 lights. One to the right and 1 light to the left.
Keep your flashlights off. There's something very, very strange. Keep the headset on. See if it gets any. Pieces are falling off it again.
It just moved to the right. Yeah, strange. Let's approach to the edge of the woods up there. Okay, we're looking at the thing. We're probably about 200 to 300 yards away. It looks like an eye winking at you. Still moving from side to side. And when you put the starscope on it, it's like this thing has a hollow center. A dark center, like the pupil of an eye looking at you. Winking. And it flashes so bright in the starscope that it almost bums your eye. We've passed the farmer's house and across into the next field, and now we have multiple sightings of up to 5 lights with a similar shape and all, but they seem to be steady now rather than a pulsating or glow with a red flash. We've just crossed a creek and we're getting what kind of readings now? We're getting 3 good clicks on the meter and we're seeing strange lights in the sky.
244. We're at the far side of the second farmer's field and made sighting again about 110 degrees. This looks like it's clear off to the coast. It's right on the horizon. Moves about a bit and flashes from time to time. Still steady or red in color. Also after negative readings in the center of the field. We're picking up slight readings. 4 or 5 clicks now. On the meter. 305. We see strange strobe-like flashes to the well, they're sporadic, but there's definitely some kind of phenomenon. 305. At about 10 degrees. Horizon. Directly north, we've got 2 strange objects. Half-moon shape. Dancing about with colored lights on them. That, guessed to be about 5 to 10 miles out. Maybe less. The half-moons are now turning to full circles. As though there was an eclipse or something there. For a minute or two. 0315. Now we've got an object about 10 degrees directly south. 10 degrees off the horizon. And the ones to the north are moving. One's moving away from us.
It's moving out fast. This one on the right's heading away too. They're both heading north. Okay, here he comes from the south. He's coming toward us now. Now we're observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal.
0330. And the objects are still in the sky, although the one to the south looks like it's losing a little bit of altitude. We're going around and heading back toward the house. The object to the south is still beaming downlights to the ground. 0400 hours. One object still hovering over Woodbridge Base at about 5 to 10 degrees off the horizon. Still moving erratic, and similar lights and beaming down as earlier.
It is clear that something very unusual occurred in December 1980 at Rendlesham Forest, even though witness statements have some conflicts. What was it? An experimental military craft of some sort? Was it a craft from another planet? The official response is that nothing of significance occurred on that night. Whatever it was, several military personnel witnessed something that cannot be dismissed out of hand. The year is 1980. The place? Southeast London, England. A UFO was witnessed by multiple witnesses hovering in the sky for over 1 hour. The object then accelerated and disappeared vertically. On December 15th, 1980, at about 16:07 hours, the witness, Timothy Good, was walking back to his apartment when he witnessed something unusual in the sky. The witness stated,
"Walking back to my flat in southeast London on the 15th of December 1980. My attention was drawn to a bright star-like object in the cloudless sky, which appeared to be motionless at an elevation of about 65 degrees to 75 degrees. The time, I noted, was 4:07 p.m., realizing that it was in the wrong position for Venus. I considered the possibility that it might have been a balloon or an aircraft reflecting the last rays of the sun, but naturally wondered if it could have been a UFO. I dashed the remaining distance back home, where I intended observing the object through my refractor telescope and taking photographs and movie film if necessary. I opened all the windows and scanned the sky, but there was no sign of anything apart from a few distant airliners. The time was now about 4:15 p.m.
The next day, the witness received information from a Kentish Times reporter that at least 40 witnesses had observed the same object. Peter McSherry, clerk for works for Lovell, advised the following.
The object was first seen at 3 p.m. directly above the site. He told me and was apparently motionless. Shortly afterward, an aircraft was seen passing below the object, and the UFO proceeded to move across the sky and stop. After a while, a puff of vapor emitted from the object, which then began to move slowly across toward the east, where it again remained stationary. Mr. McSherry fetched his 20x binoculars and was then able to see that the object was of an elongated triangular shape, with a reddish-orange nose, silvery body, and diamond blue rear section, with its nose pointing southeast. He estimated the object's altitude to be 50.000 feet, which can only be very approximate since its size was not known. The UFO then turned over on its axis and pointed the nose toward the west. Another puff of vapor appeared, and in seconds it had traversed the 76 December 1980 77 sky and returned to its original position directly above the site. At 3:20 p.m. it turned over on its axis again and moved slowly across the sky. By this time at least 40 people, including hospital engineers as well as workmen from Lovells, were observing the object, which remained stationary in the west. At 3:35 p.m. it turned on its axis yet again and shot off toward the moon at fantastic speed. Eventually, it returned to the east where it remained until 4 p.m., at which time it turned on its axis and, emitting a puff of vapor from its tail section, accelerated at thousands of miles per hour and returned to its original position above the site. At 4:15 p.m. the nose was pointing toward the west. But it then turned upward and seemed to divide into two distinct objects which took off vertically, leaving two vapor trails for a moment before disappearing.
A low magnification video of the incident surfaced which shows an unknown object in the sky. Although the object is indistinct, the record comments of the witnesses as they describe its maneuvers are invaluable. Obviously, something was observed in this incident. The object moved in such a manner that negates the possibility of a balloon or the planet Venus. If military in origin, then the object had capabilities way beyond 1980's expected capabilities, or even of currently known technologies of 2021. The year is 1981. The place? Plymouth, England. A large, silent UFO was witnessed hovering over houses in the middle of the night. The witness was struck by a green beam which caused her to be temporarily paralyzed. On September 10, 1980, at about 23:15 hours, the witness, Denise Bishop, returned home from work. At this time, the witness observed something very unusual at the back of her house. The witness stated,
"The object was unlit, and a dark metallic grey, but coming from underneath it and shining down on the rooftops. Beneath it were 6 or 7 broad shafts of light. These were in lovely pastel shades of pink and purple. And there was also white. I saw all this in an instant. And I was terrified. I hurriedly reached for the door. But as I put my hand on the handle, from the unlit side of the craft a lime green colored pencil beam of light came and hit the back of my hand. As soon as it touched my hand I couldn't move and was stopped dead in my tracks, paralyzed. The beam stayed on my hand for at least 30 seconds, in which time I could only stand and watch the UFO. I was very frightened. Although the UFO was a fantastic sight to see, it was huge and silent. In fact, the whole area around about seemed very quiet. The green beam, which gave off no illumination and was rather like a rod of light, then switched off. And I continued to open the back door. It was in fact as though a film had been stopped and started again. I had been stopped in mid-stride, and when the beam went off I continued with the same movement as before. I opened the door and rushed into the house. As I did so, I saw the UFO lift up into the sky slightly and then begin moving away out of my sight. Rubbing my hand, I ran and told my sister. Together we went outside again, but there was now nothing to be seen. We went in again and my sister examined my hand, but there was nothing there to see. I sat down and a few minutes later my sister's dog began sniffing at the hand and made it sting. On looking at it again I now noticed spots of blood on it. And after I had washed it I saw that it was burned.
The witness called the police and they would not take a report from her. They put her on to Bob Boyd of the Plymouth UFO Research Group, who investigated the incident. On arrival at Denise's house, Bob took a couple of black and white photographs of the burn mark, which appeared as a patch of shiny skin with spots of blood and bruising. It looked as if a patch of skin had been removed, exposing the shiny, new skin beneath, Bob reported. He tried to persuade Denise to go to the casualty ward at the local hospital, but she refused. 2 days after the incident, Denise's wound appeared still very sore. A week after the incident, she had a fully formed scab over her burn. After 3 months, she was left with a pale mark resembling a birthmark. This case has a credible witness with no obvious reason for lying about the incident. There is also the evidence of the burn on the witness's hand, which was quite real and photographed. I see the possibilities here as an alien craft of some kind, or even an alien reproduction vehicle up to no good. If military in origin, then the object had abilities way beyond the 1980s expected capabilities, or even of currently known technologies of 2021. The year is 1983. The place? Basingstoke Canal in Aldershot, Hampshire, England. The witness was fishing in the early hours of the morning. At this time, the witness was approached by 2 small, humanoid figures with helmets on. The humanoids and witness walked around the bend to a waiting 45-foot diameter craft which was sitting on the towpath. The witness entered the craft and after a short while was told he could leave. After the witness left the craft, it flew away at a high rate of speed. On August 12, 1983, at about 00:15 hours, the witness, Alfred Bertu, went fishing at Basingstoke Canal in Aldershot, Hampshire. At about 01 hours, the witness experienced a very unusual event. The witness stated,
I saw a vivid light coming toward me from the south, which is over North Town. It wavered over the railway line and then came on again, then settled down. The vivid light went out, though I could still see a light through the boughs of the trees. I thought, well, that can't be an airplane, it's too low because it was at about 300 feet. During this time I had set the cup down on the tackle box and lit a cigarette. And while smoking it my dog began to growl. It was then that I saw two forms coming toward me, and when they were within 5 feet of me they just stopped and looked at me, and I at them. For a good 10 or 15 seconds. Tiny, an obedient dog, had stopped growling by this time. On her master's command, they were about 4 feet high, dressed in pale green coveralls from head to foot, and they had helmets of the same color with a visor that was blacked out. Then the one on the right beckoned me with his right forearm and turned away. Still waving its arm, I took it that he wished me to follow, which I did. He moved off and I fell in behind him, and the chap that was on the left fell in behind me. We walked along the towpath until we got to the railings by the canal bridge. The form in front of me went through the railings, while I went over the top, and we crossed Government Road, then went down on the footpath. Going around a slight left-hand bend I saw a large object, about 40 to 45 feet across, standing on the towpath, with about 10 to 15 feet of it over the bank on the left of the path. And I thought, Christ, what the hell's that? Didn't think about UFOs at the time. When we got down there this form in front of me went up the steps and I followed. The steps were offline to the towpath and we had to step onto the grass to go up them. Portholes were set in the hull, and the object rested on two ski-type runners. Going in the door, the corners weren't sharp, they were rounded off. We went into this octagonal room. The form in front of me crossed over the room, and I heard a sound as if a sliding door was being opened and closed. I stood in the room to the right of the door, and the form that had walked behind me stood just inside, between me and the door. I don't know whether it was to stop me going out or not. I stood there a good 10 minutes, taking in everything I could see. The walls, the floor, and the ceiling were all black, and looked to me like unfinished metal, whereas the outside looked like burnished aluminum. I did not see any sign of nuts or bolts, nor did I see any seams where the object had been put together. What did interest me most of all was a shaft that rose up from the floor to the ceiling. The shaft was about 4 feet in circumference, and on the right-hand side of it was a Z-shaped handle. On either side of that stood two forms, similar to those that walked along the towpath with me. All of a sudden a voice said to me, "Come and stand under the amber light." I could not see any amber light until I took a step to my right, and there it was way up on the wall just under the ceiling. I stood there for about 5 minutes. Then a voice said, "What is your age?" I said, "I shall be 78 next birthday." And after a while I was asked to turn around, which I did, facing the wall. After about 5 minutes he said to me, "You can go. You are too old and infirm for our purpose." I left the object, and while walking down the steps I used the handrail and found it had 2 joints in it. So I came to the conclusion it was telescopic. I walked along the towpath to about halfway between the object and the canal bridge, stopped, and looked back and noticed that the dome of the object looked very much like an oversized chimney cowl and that it was revolving anti-clockwise. I then walked on to the spot where I had left my dog and fishing tackle. And the first thing I did when I got there was to pick up my cold cup of tea and drink it. And then I heard this whining noise, just as if an electric generator was starting up. And this thing lifted off and the bright light came on again. It was so bright that I could see my fishing float in the water 6 feet away from the opposite bank of the canal, and the thin iron bars on the canal bridge. The object took off at a very high speed, out over the military cemetery in the west, and then a little later I saw the light going over the Hog's Back and out of sight. This was around 2:00.
The year is 1984. The place? Stanmore, Middlesex, England. Several British police officers and one civilian witnessed a UFO flying over Stanmore. The object changed colors multiple times, and at one point, it emitted a large ball of light which shot towards the ground and alarmed the witnesses. After 3 hours, the object flew away towards the M1 highway. On April 26, 1984, at about 21:45 hours, the witness, Ruth Novelli, of Bushy, observed an object in the sky from her backyard. The witness stated,
"My next-door neighbor knocked on my door and asked me to see what it was. I looked up and there was a light in the sky that was changing colors from pink to yellow to blue. It was also moving back and forth and up and down, but we weren't close enough to see it. My neighbor called the RAF to see whether they had anything up there and they didn't. So she called the police. The police blocked off the road and took pictures with a telescopic lens. I didn't know what it was. I wasn't scared. Just mystified. It was there for 3 hours."
Police Constable Richard Milthrop reported that the object was initially observed at an elevation of about 45 degrees, but after about 15 minutes, it moved to the right and slightly higher. It was he who drew the sketch of the object, which he described as circular in the middle with a dome on top and below. Richard Milthrop stated,
"The dome on top had blue and white flashing lights, while the dome underneath was blue, green, white, and pink. It was moving erratically up and down and to and fro."
A total of 8 policemen witnessed the mysterious object. One of the police officers took photographs, but these did not come out at all. According to the police area press officer, some of the police officers chased the UFO by car for a short distance, but the object was already fading from view by that time.
The year is 1988. Author and UFO researcher Timothy Good releases his book called Above Top Secret. Using documented research and personal testimony, the author asserts that evidence of life on other planets and of visits to Earth by alien spacecraft has been suppressed by various governments around the world. Timothy Good is widely regarded as one of the world's leading experts on alien phenomena, known for his integrity and determination as a highly skilled researcher. He has lectured at the Royal and Canadian Military Institute, Royal Naval Air Station, the House of Lords All-Party UFO Study Group, the Institute of Medical Laboratory Sciences, and the Oxford and Cambridge Union Societies. In May 1998, he was invited to the Pentagon to discuss alien activity, and he lectured at the headquarters of the French Air Force in 2002. He has also acted as consultant for several U.S. congressional investigations. He is the author of Above Top Secret, Alien Contact, Alien Base, Unearthly Disclosure, and Need to Know, UFOs, the Military, and Intelligence. Tim lives in England. The book Above Top Secret was originally published in 1988. Today's video is a thank you video to Timothy Good for his great book that helped change my view of the world. I have leaned heavily on the Above Top Secret book for my videos as his book is just so awesome. I bought my copy in 1989 at the world's biggest bookstore in Toronto. If I remember correctly, there was a big hubbub about the book's release. I strongly recommend trying to get a copy.